It's early in training camp, but those nagging concerns about the New York Giants offensive line continue to linger. I'm going to fill you in on why coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia China, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you for making us part of your day. If you're listening to us for the first time, your first listen of the day, we thank you for that as well. All right, New York Giant fans, day 3, practice number 3 of training camp is in the books. And rather than go through, the usual observations and stuff, and I'll sprinkle a few of those in that are relevant, but I thought I would take a broader look at the Giants and where things are kind of headed and where they're at right now after 3 days. Now, I realize it's early, but we're going to take a look at the offensive line. We're going to focus mainly on the offensive line. So I'm going to start off with a look at Andrew Thomas and the left tackle situation. Then I'm going to look at the center situation, which to me is just, it's a concern that not a lot of people are talking about, but I think we need to be talking about a little bit more. And then in segment 3, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball and try to decipher if this battle between Cor'Dale, Flott, and Deonte Banks is a real thing. So we'll take a look at some deep dives with statistics, and we'll just get right into it. And along the way, I'll give you a few notes and nuggets from Friday's practice. So again, welcome on into everybody. Okay, let's start off with the left tackle situation on the offensive line. Now, I want to emphasize it's only been 3 days of training camp. The pads have not gone on yet. I understand that. But there are little things that you can kind of see that make you say, okay, I'm not sure about the direction things are headed in. And the first thing I feel we need to discuss is the left tackle situation. Now, as everybody knows, Andrew Thomas is on PUP, still recovering from the season-ending foot surgery that he had late last year. He is expected to be ready to go. And in a moment, I'll tell you why that is so important. I'll give you some actual stats. But what I have seen so far in training camp, and this kind of goes back to the spring, is I'm not feeling warm and fuzzy about the depth they have right now behind Andrew Thomas at that left tackle spot. Now, again, there's no pads, and the defense, obviously, they have the advantage because the offensive lineman can't really get into their blocks and whatnot. But what I'm talking about specifically is when I see the speed of the Giants edge rushers coming at the left tackle spot right now, and that left tackle spot not being able to respond in a timely fashion, that's not an issue of not having the pads on. That's just an issue of matching speed with speed, power with power. So that's what I'm really concerned about with this offensive line. It's like, right now the Giants have James Hudson III filling in at left tackle for Andrew Thomas with the first team. There was on Thursday, we did briefly see a few snaps of Joshua Zudo at left tackle. All right. I thought that experiment was over, but he did get a few snaps at left tackle, that with the second team. So I hope that they have an answer at left tackle if Andrew Thomas can't go. Right now, I haven't really felt warm and fuzzy about that being the case. Now, I want to give you some numbers about Andrew Thomas with him in the lineup and without him in the lineup to really drive home the point of how important it is he's in there. But before I do that, I do want to say that on Friday, Andrew Thomas was spotted for the first time, I think, since the end of last season when he spoke to the media. He was out on the practice field stretching. He didn't do any work. Obviously, he's on PUP, so all he can do is kind of work off to the side with a trainer. He can't be on the field when his teammates are practicing and whatnot. So that was kind of a positive sign in the right direction. Now, does that mean Andrew Thomas is going to come off a pup anytime soon? I don't think so. I don't think just yet. The Giants don't get into pads until Monday. And my guess is the Giants might hold them at least another week, possibly two. I would say we probably see Andrew Thomas somewhere. I would say probably after the second preseason game is over. Maybe we see him for that third preseason week and then just give him enough time. That should give him enough time to get ready for week one. But let me get into these stats here because this is pretty interesting on how the Giants did with and without Andrew Thomas in the lineup. Now, just for context, I'm going to give you the numbers for all 17 games so you kind of know what we're looking at here. So the Giants, according to True Media, averaged 294.8 yards per game, 4.7 yards per play, 104.9 rushing yards, 189.9 passing yards. All right. So that's the overall with and without Thomas. Now let's break that down to with Thomas and without Thomas. Okay. With Thomas, the Giants averaged 319.3 yards per game. Without him, 182.1. Average yards per play with Thomas, 4.8. Without him, 4.7. Rushing yards, 105.8. Without him, 67.5. And passing yardage, believe it or not, 213.5 with him, 114.5 without him. So, yeah, this man's important to the success of this Giants offense, right? That is why, ladies and gentlemen, the Giants are being overly cautious with him. That is why they are giving him as much time as possible to make sure that that foot is 110% ready to go, all right? So yeah, that's key. Now, I want to give you a couple of other quick stats with and without Thomas, as if you need any more convincing, right? Okay, third down. The Giants converted 36.8% of their third down plays with Thomas in the lineup, 34.5% without him. And sacks per attempt, 6.4% per attempt with him, 9.2% without him. So they had more sacks without him. All right, the jury's in. Andrew Thomas is important. You know, again, it was encouraging to see him out there. Maybe this is the start of him starting to ramp things up a little bit. Maybe we'll start to see him do running and some agility exercises and whatnot. So that is what I think is going to happen over the next week. The Giants, of course, are off on Saturday. They're back on the field Sunday. They are in pads on Monday and Tuesday, from what I understand. And then afterwards, I think they're off Wednesday, and I think it's no pads for the rest of the week. But the point being is Andrew Thomas, for those of you who are like, oh my God, you know, what's going on here? That's kind of the plan. And, you know, I'm sure I didn't need to give you these stats to tell you how important the guy is, but if this doesn't drive home the point as to why they are being so cautious with him, then I don't know what will. All right. So Andrew Thomas, again, to recap, made his first appearance outside on the field while the team was practicing, did some stretching alongside of a trainer who was watching him. It looks like they're going to start to ramp him up a little bit. I don't think he comes off PUP this coming week, possibly the week after, but I think it's going to be closer maybe towards week 3 of the preseason. So that's what I'm thinking. Just my guess. All right, coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the center position and why I'm starting to get really concerned about that spot. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, Giant fans, we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting to concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view so that there are no surprises. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. Worried about what happens if plans change? The Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. So go on, take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And again, the Giants are off on Saturday. They're back in the saddle on Sunday. I'm not going to be able to make Sunday's practice, unfortunately. Well, it's actually my husband's birthday, so I'm going to spend the day with him. But I will be back for Monday and Tuesday when the team goes into pads. So really excited about that. And by the way, Giant fans, if you enjoy these deep dives I take into the stats to kind of make the points and the analysis, you might want to check out our Blue Crew community. That's our exclusive group of Giant fans who come together to discuss Giants football, receive updates, and get access to a lot more. Now, this year for the Blue Crew, I'm going to take some of these stats and I'm going to present them to the Blue Crew community members. For example, I just posted a breakdown of how the three main Giant receivers did with each quarterback that they played against. And that's a stat that actually somebody asked me about. So I'm going to post that. I'm going to hopefully have diagram breakdowns of key plays in the game, and so much more. So anyway, if you want to check out the Locked On Giants Blue Crew community, you can start your free 14-day trial today by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNYGiants. If you like it, you continue for just $4.99 a month. If you don't like it, you can cancel before your trial period ends, and you will owe absolutely nothing. The Locked On Giants Blue Crew is for fans like you, so do check it out today. All right, Giant fans, let's talk now about a position group, or a position, I should say, that I'm a little concerned about. And I don't think it's getting enough discussion, but I'm going to talk about it now, and that is the center spot. Okay, so why am I concerned with the center spot? I think we can all agree that John Michael Schmitz, through 2 years, while slowly making progress, just right now is not where I think he needs to be. There's too much of him being on the ground. There's not enough physicality in his game. For example, when he gets out to the second level, rather than hit somebody, he just tries to seal the guy off. The double team blocks that he takes part in, just they leave something to be desired. And he has athleticism issues where, he can't keep up with sliding and pass protection. All right. Now, to start off camp, again, it's early, but I haven't been overly thrilled with what he's shown so far in camp. All right. We have seen at least there were 3 botched snaps today where it was either airmailed or off target, or he snapped the ball too early. There was a botched snap in yesterday's practice and Thursday's practice. So really that's 4 botched snaps that we have seen. This isn't the first time John Michael Schmitz is working with Russell Wilson, by the way. They worked together in the spring. So why this is continuing, I mean, you can make the case that, maybe it's because it's early on and they're just, trying to get back into the rhythm. And certainly I hope so, but that's a little bit of a concern. Okay. The other thing that continues to be a concern with me, and I know a lot of you probably saw this clip, somebody from the stands videotaped it, Abdul Carter, who is going to be a handful, regardless of who he goes up against, absolutely ragdoll Schmitz. Now you're probably saying, well, Abdul Carter's going to ragdoll a lot of guys he lines up against. And maybe he will. But my point is you don't want to see your starting offensive lineman on the ground. You want to see them at least put up some kind of a resistance, if you will. Even if they get pushed back, you want to see them stay on their feet. You want to see them fight back. And it just seemed like, on that play, and I know it's just one play, but on that play, I was like, gosh, does John Michael Schmitz have the strength that he needs to go against these big guys that are coming up the middle, to go against the Dexter Lawrences, for example, to go against the speed rushers like Abdul Carter or Brian Burns or Kayvon Thibodeau if they happen to, loop inside on a stunt. So that to me is a concern because, and I'll tell you what I think they might end up doing in a moment, but I want to give you some stats with John Michael Schmitz from last year. Let's take a look at what the Giants did with John Michael Schmitz in the lineup and without. And the asterisk here that I have to assign is that John Michael Schmitz, I believe, only missed a couple of games. So it might be a little lopsided, but some of the numbers are really, eye-opening. With John Michael Schmitz in the lineup, the Giants averaged 281 yards per game, 4.5 yards per play. They had a 5.1 net yards per attempt, and they had a sack per attempt rate of 9.1% with a 34.7% third down conversion rate. Without John Michael Schmitz in there, and remember, Greg Van Roten replaced him there towards the end, the Giants, the average yards per play was 5.9, so it went up. The net yards went up 7.8, and the sacks per attempt went down 1.49. All right. So, again, it's kind of lopsided because John Michael Schmitz did play a lot last year, and the numbers tend to be skewed, but it just seemed like when he was not in the lineup, the interior was a little bit more solid towards the end there, a little bit more physical. Now, here's what I'm kind of wondering. I've wondered about the guard situation. If Evan Neal makes the successful conversion to guard, and Evan Neal, by the way, has been working mostly at left guard with the starting offense, and he flips over to right guard when the twos come on the field. So I've been saying, gosh, what if Evan Neal makes the conversion, so he goes to left guard, John Runyon Jr. goes to right guard, and Greg Van Roten goes to the bench. Well, now I'm wondering if Schmitz struggles, and we'll see if he does or doesn't the rest of the camp. It's early, so maybe he turns it around. But could there be a possibility where the Giants say, you know what? We're going to roll with Van Roten at center because he gives us a little better chance in the run game, in pass protection, at the second level, and so forth. So this summer, goes without saying, this is a big year for John Michael Schmitz. It's year 3 for him. He is, like I said, he has gotten a little bit better from his rookie campaign, but still not quite the player that I think they were counting on him to be in year 3. But year 3 is the magic number for a lot of these guys. If they don't start to really head upward in their trajectory, then something's wrong. So, all right, coming up next, Cor'Dale Flott been rotating with Deonte Banks for cornerback 2. Is that a real competition, or is it just to push Banks? I'm going to give you my thoughts on that right after this. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and I love how smooth the draft day experience is and the volumes of information they provide to help team owners make the most informed decisions. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins on August 4th. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, that's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked on Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. This is a special bonus episode. I told you that if there's a practice, I'm going to get you a report one way or another. So this is a little extra report for you. And we will be back with a new episode on Monday. So we'll just continue bringing you camp reports, interviews, all that stuff. If you haven't checked out New York Giants on SI, do check that out. I had an interview with Micah McFadden that I managed to get on Thursday. So check that out. We had a nice little discussion, and I'm going to have more for you. So just trying to do some stuff to fill that gap until we get to week 1 of the season. All right. In this segment, let's talk about this competition that seems to have popped up between Cor'Dale Flott and Deonte Banks. Now, is this a real competition? The coaches will tell you yes. All right. I don't think they'll admit to saying, okay, we're using one guy over another, to light a fire under another guy's butt. But here's the thing. I went into True Media Stats because the Giants, as you all know, they tend to play more zone coverage than they do man. Quite a difference from what they did when Wink Martindale was here. And I wanted to see who was the better cornerback last year in zone coverage. And no surprise, or maybe there's a surprise here. It was about equal. All right. So I'll give you some numbers here. Cor'Dale Flott in zone coverage allowed a 77.9% completion rate against passes that were thrown his way, and an average of 7.9 yards per attempt. All right. Slightly better than what Deonte Banks did in coverage, in zone coverage. Deonte Banks' numbers, he allowed 79.2% completion rate, and he gave up 8.3 yards. So those numbers right there would suggest, okay, maybe Cor'Dale Flott is a little bit better and a guy you want as your cornerback too. But here's what I think is going to happen, all right? I do think that Deonte Banks is going to win the job. But I also think we could very well see a rotation, or maybe rotation is not the right word, but we could see Banks and Flott maybe split the reps once we get to week 1. Because isn't the idea to put your best players on the field for the situations that you're facing? Now, the danger of that is if you put Flott out there and you're an opposing team, you say to yourself, well, he's a little bit better in zone coverage than Banks, so they're going to play some zone. Or you just say, you know what, regardless, we're going to try and find the soft spot in the zone and beat you anyway. So, I don't think it's that big of a deal if the Giants do go to that kind of situation where they put Flott out there for obvious zone calls and Banks out there when they want to play man. Because here's the other thing to keep in mind. I don't think the Giant cornerbacks this year are going to travel with the number 1 receiver. All right. I don't think, Adebo, who is CB1 for the Giants, I think he's going to play on his side, and whoever, Banks and Flott are going to play on their side. But I also wonder, and this is something I want to see, especially when we get into the joint practices with the Jets and the preseason games. I'm curious to see if maybe that changes, because Adebo has pretty much played on one side his entire career, as has Banks. Does that change? Because look, if you're an opposing offensive coordinator, you say to yourself, well, heck, I'm going to put my number 1 receiver against Banks every single time. So that's why I'm wondering if maybe there's going to be like a little bit of a rotation there, if they're going to work Flott into the mix a little bit more than, what we anticipate. So in that regard, I'm not so sure that this is a true competition where, one guy is going to beat out the other. I think it's more or less a preparation and maybe a signal that, okay, maybe the Giants are going to stay with the cornerbacks playing sides, but if the opposing offense decides to put their best receiver on the side where Banks lines up, well, heck, maybe Cor'Dale Flott comes in. So that's what I think they're trying to do. And again, we'll find out more as we go in to the summer and the scrimmage. We should probably find out some stuff when we see the scrimmages with the Jets. So it's an interesting development. And, at first I thought it was just, oh, they're just lighting the fire under Banks's, backside. But, here's the other thing, folks, that it's come to this. It's kind of, a sad statement. Because remember, Banks was a guy they took in the first round. They traded up one spot to get him. And if this is what they have to do, that's a L, as far as the draft record goes. I mean, when you have to rotate a guy in, if that's what your plan is, if you have to rotate a guy in that you took in the first round, that's not really a strong reflection on, on what you did there. Now, obviously, the hope is that by doing this, maybe Deonte Banks develops and becomes more comfortable in zone coverage. So we'll see. That's why they brought in new coaches at that position. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be an interesting storyline to play out. We're seeing it start to play out, and I do think that that's what the Giants are leaning towards doing, at least initially. But we'll see if I'm right. So, all right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. Want to thank you for tuning in to this special edition. Don't forget, I'll be back on Monday with an all-new episode. Until then, have a good weekend, and I'll see you then.